Oh yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome. A little bit of a jam moment before we get started.
This is too awesome. You're gonna be out of breath. You're not gonna be able to do the interview.
That'll be a good way to start us off. We all need a little bit of mercy when we start whatever we're doing in life. Justin, I am so excited. I could have played, Hail to the Chief because that's the way
Right.
I introduced you the last time we were meeting someone new. But so excited to have you on the show and welcome everybody to the Unforgettable Experiences live show. Today we are here with none other than Justin Dean. If you don't know Justin, he's an entrepreneur, he's an author, he's a church communications leader. He was the communications director at Mars Hill Church in Seattle. You may have heard of that church, and that probably is part of why he wrote the book PR Matters.
Don't Google it if you haven't heard of it.
For church communicators, but now, and then he also created that church conference, which went around for about 10 years. And today he leads marketing for Tithely. So, man, excited to have you here on the show today, Justin. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It's an honor, and I don't know how you have breath after that intro, man. But you're a rock star.
I stopped after a minute. If we'd have gone for 5 minutes, I might have been out of breath a little bit more. So I want to start with just the real basic question. How did you get into doing events? Like it was a decade or more ago that you created that church conference. How did you decide I want to put my foot into that pool?
Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody actually decide? I feel like we just kind of fall into it. If somebody truly decided, they got maybe something wrong with them. But I was communications director at Mars Hill in Seattle for about 5 years, and then that church ended. The pastor resigned, and found myself without a job. Like I was one of the last employees there, helped kind of shut it down. But then at the end of that, I was laid off like everybody else. And so, I was in ministry and loved being a part of it and wanted to stay in ministry. But at the same time, it was such an experience that I wasn't quite ready to just go work for another church. Like we had some offers from other churches, and I started doing some consulting with them and things like that, but wasn't ready to go full time quite yet, or wanted to take our time to figure out like where would we go next. And I just got together with a few friends, communications directors at other churches, and people we knew kind of in the industry, and we were having coffee, and it had always been a dream of mine to kind of run our own event. I had helped run major conferences at Mars Hill and had gained some experience there and just loved that part of the job. And so we said, well, hey, to fill the time, why don't we put together an event for communications and marketing leaders in the church? Like there wasn't really anything out there that honed in on that niche. There's a lot of, leadership conferences and church conferences that are great, but nothing that was really for the communications director or marketing director at a church. And that was fairly a new role at the time too. And so we put together an event. I had actually moved from Seattle to Atlanta, Georgia. And we decided, okay, let's just rent out a co-working space and, we'll try to fill the event. We thought it would be a local type of thing. But the first ticket, once we put up the website and Twitter account and everything, the first ticket sold was from California, and we were like, "Oh man, like people are flying in for this thing. We better make it good." And so it just evolved from there. And the first event was, smashing success. I think the room capacity was 100, and we had 150 people in it. People standing in the end. We just, we didn't quite know what we were doing, or that you're supposed to stop accepting ticket sales, when the room's full. But it was great. People loved it. The content was amazing. And I decided to just make that my full-time job at the time, and kept running it, and kept it going.
Yeah, it's such a great story, and I think one thing that I love about that story is you tapped a need that was a felt need that people had not expressed or realized, and if you fast forward 10 years or whatever it's been, there's several other conferences that exist to
Yeah,
serve the church communications market.
sure.
So, and I think when we were at Social Media Marketing World, we were the first to really put our foot in the ground, saying that we're gonna be a social media only, and then
Right.
over time, you've seen lots of other events pop up because they
Oh, yeah.
realize, "Oh, there's money to be made here," and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
justification, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, the niche has grown over time. But it's interesting, like even the bigger conferences don't really focus in on it, and I think that's, there's a real need still for it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what led to the sale of that conference in just a
Yeah.
little bit, but I wanna talk about what makes your events different, and then let's ask it a little bit different way. So you
Mhm.
were running that event for 10 years or around there. What's
Yeah.
something that you pay attention to that you notice that when you go to other conferences, they don't pay attention to, and why is that so important to you?
Yeah, sure. For us, I mean, it was always about practical content. Like we would go to these conferences, and I won't name names because I've actually helped run most of them over the years, and they're great events. You walk away like fired up and motivated, and maybe you learned one or two things, but it really was more about networking and motivation, and getting time away. It wasn't so much about like, here's a practical tool that you can learn how to use. And for, especially since we were honing in on the niche of like communications and marketing and social media for churches, we really wanted to have practical teaching. Like we always said, like you could go to the conference on Tuesday and Wednesday and apply what you learned that Sunday. And every year we saw people do that. Like they'd literally tweet out, "Hey, I'm applying this, practical tool this Sunday. I'm trying this Sunday," and then they'd share the results online. It was just amazing to see that. Like we really honed in on that type of content, and less. We never did worship at the events. We never did big flashy shows. It was, you're coming to learn. Pull up your laptop and learn, and come along with us with this. So we'd have sessions on how to run
Mm.
Facebook ads, how to, what your church website should look like, how to actually engage with people on social media instead of just promoting come to church on Sunday, like stuff like that, that they really could, take notes on, and walk away with. You know, they felt motivated and encouraged, and there was definitely a community that evolved around from it as well. So we got all that too, but the people came because they learned new things.
So you could say, I haven't said it this way before, but it was a working conference. Like, hey, we
Sure.
expect you to show up with your laptop. We're going to show you how to do things, and you're going to walk away already knowing how to do it. Is that kind of what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say?
absolutely. Yeah, we'd even say that. Like we purposely would set up our tables so there's power and a table in front of you at each seat, and people came ready to work. They'd learn something, and then they'd go open up their website and make that change on the spot because they were like, "Oh, that's brilliant. I can do that right now." Because these were the people actually doing that. Like we used to say that we're a conference that teaches you how to run your church, led by people who run our churches. Like all of our speakers and everybody were always practitioners. They were people who worked in the church. They weren't hired motivational speakers and your typical conference speakers. They were communications directors at other churches, big and small. They were social media managers themselves. So when they got up on stage, it was, here's what we're doing at our church. Here's what worked for us. Here's the case study and the charts and the graphs and everything that show how it was successful or not. And here's how you can implement that at your church as well. And oftentimes it was like, here's our marketing plan. You can just have it. Just change the name and oh,
Right.
your pastor wrote a book. Here, our pastor just wrote a book. Here's my 40-page marketing plan on what we did. It was like fantastic. The community collaboration there.
And that's not going to be true at every conference that people who listen to this are doing. There's a camaraderie in the church world where we want to help each other.
Sure.
There are places and denominations where it feels like there's a little bit more of a barrier, but in general,
Yeah.
people want to support each other. Um, what you just said helps explain something that I
Yeah.
experienced with you probably a decade ago. When you and I first met, you were doing online summits
Yep.
around all the same topics that you're talking about. And I was working on online summits for Social Media Examiner, and I saw the speakers you were bringing, and you had a couple people in common, like Dustin Stout and Owen
Yeah.
Himsouth and a couple others. But in general, you were using a lot of different people. And my gut reaction was, well, there's some awesome Christian speakers who are speaking at our event. You ought to have them. But now I'm understanding something. You wanted people who were actually doing it in the trenches
Yeah.
at churches and not people who were necessarily consultants who were out there who probably still were doing it, but not
Right.
necessarily in your church market. Is that
Yeah,
probably
we even had a tagline, practitioners over theory. Like we didn't want anybody on stage who was a career speaker or consultant who had never worked in a church before. Like it's okay to work in a church and then move on and do something else and speak from those experiences. But there were a number of speakers where it's like you've never actually built anything or done anything, but yet you're speaking on how our church should be run, and you may not be wrong. Like there may be good theories that we can put to
mm,
the test and see if they work, but uh, you know, so there's not necessarily anything wrong with that or those people. I know most of them. Again, I'm like trying not to name names because I don't want to like throw anybody under the bus, but they're all great people and they all provide good content. And most of the time, the theories are based in some kind of experience or knowledge that they've gained.
right?
But we just wanted to be hyper practical. Like, no, we've already done this and tested it, and so here you go. Here's how you can do it yourself.
So let's get real practical right now, talking to the event organizers who are listening to this. How do you set those speakers up to deliver that? Because I know
Uh,
as a speaker, it's easy to speak in generalizations, it's easy to tell stories and not get practical. So, what
right.
coaching do you provide? Do you sit down and walk them through it? Like,
Yeah.
walk me through how you would make sure someone delivers on that promise.
Yeah, it definitely was harder than it sounds. Part of it is picking the right people. So, like, I would follow people online, and I would make lists on Twitter of potential speakers, and then I would just watch them. I'd watch what they post. I'd dig into videos and content that they put out there, and I just, I had all these lists and notes of who I wanted to speak. More often than not, when people spoke at that church conference, it was their first time speaking at a conference. You got people like Katie Allred and Brady Scher, Neil Smith. Like, 10 years ago, the first time they ever spoke at a conference was at that church conference. And so it was because I followed them online and I was like, hey, you know what you're talking about. You're
Mm,
speaking from the trenches.
mm.
We'd love for you to come and share that with a few hundred churches that are, coming to this conference. And it just, it just worked. We just picked the right people. But then I'd also take the time. I mean, my main role was working with the speakers and setting up, calls ahead of time to be like, okay, let's walk through what you're going to speak about. And they typically throw out a topic and I'd be like, okay, that's great, but what can you show to actually prove that that worked? Or are you okay with actually sharing your marketing plan from that? Like, we'll help you white label it and clear it and go get the permissions, but we want to be able to share that kind of stuff with this community. And it was just, everyone kind of had that love and heart for collaboration and sharing. That was the beauty of it too, is none of our speakers were necessarily trying to build their own platform or even sell a book. Many of them have gone on to build platforms and sell books, but at the time too, it was they were just working in the church and wanted to share and be helpful. So they weren't really in it for the money. In fact, the first few years we didn't even pay our speakers. It was literally just like, friends would come and they were happy to do it. And then as we grew over time, we were able, to pay them more and more. But they weren't in it to make money or build platforms. They were just wanting to be helpful. So but find the right people and take the time, and don't just choose the same old speakers over and over. That's one way we distinguish from many of the church conferences is, it's usually the same 10 speakers over and over. And it's like, oh, okay, how is this helpful or new? Whereas you come to our conference, you may not have heard of anybody, but you walked away going, oh my gosh, they were all brilliant. I can't wait to, you should have them again next year. We ending up with like 5 or 6 regulars that would speak each year. But every year we were trying to find those new people that were raising up in the churches.
And that's a very time intensive process, I know, because that's how Social Media Examiner has been doing things too. We find people in the wild. We don't
Yeah.
take any applications that come in. I mean, they're
Yeah.
almost always rejected carte blanche.
Oh yeah.
Occasionally, we might go look at the person and say, "Oh, well," but that's like one in almost a
Right.
thousand.
Yeah.
um,
Well, and honestly, that church conference was usually about 300 people attending it. I'm sure we could have got, to thousands had we, brought in some of those bigger, well-known speakers that draw a crowd. But maybe not. Like people came to know us for the practical content and what they learned. Like they were eager to learn what it was the new thing. Like when Snapchat came out, we were the first conference and community to really be like, hey, we're going to go explore this and use it and test it. And at first we were like, this is great. Every church should get on it. And then as Snapchat evolved and added in, the Discovery Channel and stuff like that, and it became less and less of a thing that we thought churches should promote. We then were quick to say, you know what? We actually think you should not use this, and here's why, and here's the research, and here's,
hmm.
we weren't afraid to go there, but we were the conference testing that stuff for you too.
So you, as the conference owner and leader, were spending a lot of time researching and then equipping those speakers. That right there is a job that some
Totally.
conferences have as a full-time job, but you were also doing other things, right? I mean, you were basically
Well,
running.
for the majority of the 10 years, like the conference was my full-time job, and so I was able to do most of that. And we were doing, like you said, online summits kind of throughout the year. We had one big event each year in person, and then throughout the year we had content online and summits and stuff like that. So, and a lot of that was to just stay on the trends and be ahead of it. So you knew like, hey, AI's coming, Snapchat's coming, whatever new is coming. It's like you're going to be able to come to our event later this year, and by the time that comes around, we're going to have tested this and give you the practical tools to do it well right away. So you always had something new and fresh to come to. But yeah, I mean that was full time. A lot of effort going into that.
All right, so let's fast forward 10 years later, X number of years. If I'm saying 10, is that about right?
Yeah, really the last one we did last year was the ninth
Was okay,
conference. So we're now, the
10
conference is
years
still
ago.
alive somewhat. Yeah, we're in 10th year.
But after last year, you had sold the conference to Tithely,
Yep.
which is many event organizers would love the opportunity to sell their event. Others are like, there's
Sure.
no way. They're like, this is my heart and soul. If I
Oh
sell
yeah.
it to somebody else, they're going to change it. I'm not going to recognize it after a year or two. But you
Yep.
had that opportunity. When you did that, there obviously was a compelling reason beyond the money. Obviously,
Yeah.
money incentivized you, but there must have been something you thought, there's something possible by me selling this event that's not
Mhm.
possible by me holding on to it. What was that possibility that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, there was the possibility for growth and doing it the way that we always wanted to do it. So we originally named the conference that church conference really as somewhat of a tongue-in-cheek kind of joke, but then it just stuck and people loved it. But we purposely named it something generic like that because we wanted this to become the church conference. It wasn't supposed to always be niche communications and marketing. We started that out because that was the role I knew, that was the content I knew, and that's where all my friends worked who were the speakers. And then the community just kind of grew around that, so we stuck with it. But we always had a bigger vision for it to be, the conference that you bring the entire team to. And when I got involved with Tiley, they actually were the first company to sponsor the conference. So 2015, I was scoping out venues for that first conference, and it was a co-working space. And Dean Sweetman was there. He was a pastor at a church in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and he was using the co-working space. And we met through a mutual friend, Aussie Dave, because Dean's Australian, and all Australians know each other. It's a really small island, so they all know each other. And
Yes.
he said, "Hey, you gotta meet my mate Dean." And so I sat down and talked with them. And Dean was actually starting Tidely, him and his son, at the time. They had just really got off the ground that year too. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, I'm hosting a church conference here in that big room back there in a few months." And he was like, "Well, let us sponsor it." And so they came on as the first sponsor, and they sponsored every year for all 10 years. And so we had a great relationship with them, and just loved seeing their tools evolve over time. And then come 2020, we had 1,000 tickets sold for that church conference. It was going to be our biggest one ever. But then COVID hit in March. I think our event was in the spring that year, so it was coming up, and no venue would let us hold it there. The church that we were at was like, "Yeah, we're not even meeting for church anymore. Like, we can't do this." And we started looking at other venues and hotel banquet halls and everything, but everything was shut down. And it either would have been way too expensive, and we would have had so many restrictions, and then we had ticket holders saying, my boss isn't going to let me travel anymore, or they were just too scared to at the time. So we had to, kind of shut that down, pivot, and move it to an online conference, which actually turned out to be really successful. We had 10,000 people live stream the conference that year. It was it
Wow.
was incredible. And at the time too, I was like, well, maybe this is the future. Maybe we'll just go online, even though we really loved the in-person experience. But the future was very uncertain. Tidely, on the other hand, as an online giving platform and creating software tools for churches to help them get online and become digital, they kind of thrived through COVID because as churches shut down, they needed a solution for online giving. They needed a solution for live streaming in their website and their app, and a way to connect with their people while they weren't meeting in person. And so they saw almost 20,000 churches sign up for Tithely in March and April of 2020. And so they doubled in size literally overnight. And they saw me struggling with the conference as well, and with my marketing experience and experience in the church. They approached me and they said, "Hey, we need to build a marketing team, and we need to kind of skyrocket and keep up with this demand. Would you want to come on and work full time at Tiley in this role? And part of that could even be helping us run events. We want to do customer dinners and events and see our customers in person once COVID is over." And so I entertained the thought, but like you said, the conference was my baby. It was something that we started from scratch, and it did really well, and it paid my bills for many years. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so it was hard. I basically went back to them and said, "Well, does this mean that I gotta shut down the conference?" And because they weren't necessarily looking to buy a conference, but they saw the opportunity of trying to get into the communications community, and they wanted to do events themselves, and they saw as maybe this would be a way to kickstart that and have the guy who successfully ran it and other events kind of run that for us was appealing to them. So we made a deal, and I came on as the director of marketing, and still got to run the event. We tried it the next year online again, and there wasn't quite the demand. I think we had about 5,000 people. By then, everyone was like, "Really? We're over Zoom, we're over online, like we are just dying to meet other people." And so, I don't think that the online thing would sustain. And so, with Tylee's help and resources, we were able to do another in-person one last year, which was a great success. And I just kind of pitched. I said, "Hey, I've always had the dream of this thing being a full church conference, and Tylee's always dreamed of doing a user conference. We have 40,000 customer churches, and we've always dreamed of doing a user conference for them. So now we've kind of merged the two, and we're launching what we're calling Modern Church Leader Conference this October in Dallas, and we're going to have almost 2,000 people there in a full convention center, and we're definitely going big and putting the resources behind it. So super excited about how that's evolved to that, and I think it's been wonderful that Tylee has put the resources behind this to do it well and not let the conference die down. We don't know yet what we'll do with that church conference brand. If we'll maybe do online events through that or do another communications focused event in the future. But right now we're focused on this new thing, the kind of evolution of it all. And it's gonna be pretty exciting.
So merging, I mean, you're kind of merging an event into a company that didn't have an event,
Yep.
but you're still merging cultures. I'm kind of tipping one potential answer to this question, but you can go wherever you want to. So what's been an obstacle or a hurdle in allowing the event to be acquired by another company that you weren't expecting when you started this process?
A hurdle to it becoming acquired.
To it to it being successful, and I know you haven't run it yet, like, it's in October of this year,
Right, right, yeah.
so the answer you may not be able to answer it fully until after the
Yeah, true.
but you kind of have already experienced some of the pains of trying to build something that satisfies multiple stakeholders. So,
Right.
what's something you
Yeah.
didn't expect? You probably knew some of that was gonna be true, but what's something you didn't expect?
Yeah, it really is, because it's a merge of a few different things. It's, for one, it's a brand new conference. That's always hard, especially with the scope and scale that we are going for technically a first year conference is pretty hard. Usually, you start out small and you grow it and you see where it goes, and then eventually you're like, "Wow, we're filling stadiums! Like this is crazy." We kind of just went for the top and are going after it. um, and we've got a built-in audience through that church conference a bit, but at the same time too, like you've got that audience going, well, I don't know, is this what we have always expected, and are we still going to get the practical content and the community that we've been a part of for 10 years? And the answer is yes. Like we're being careful to curate that experience for them so that they still get what they have always craved, but also opening them up to much more. And the beauty of this is that they don't have to go to this conference alone anymore. So often we would hear that they'd come to that church conference, they'd learn so much, but they'd go back home to their church, and on Monday morning they're like, I want to implement this, this, and this, and I learned this, and here's proof that this will help us grow and do this, this, and this. And their lead pastor and the worship pastor and the executive pastor was like, I don't know, like what are you talking about? We're not going to put any resources beyond that. You want to start Snapchat? What are you talking about? No, like we're not doing that. And so, we've always tried to get to the point where it's like, hey, bring the lead pastor with you. There's going to be content for him too. You bring the worship pastor, bring the student pastor, come as a team and collaborate as a team together so that you're all on the same mission, all on the same vision. You can help refine your vision even together while at the conference. And you can explore these things. Like, okay, you're worried about AI and what part it plays in your church. Come as a team and figure that out together. That's not a communications person problem. That's a everybody problem to solve. And so, I think they're going to experience that. But you know, it's a struggle trying to convince them of that because we have no no proof yet that that's what it'll be like because we haven't done this before. And at the same time, for our Tidely users who are coming to it, most of them are small churches who probably don't go to conferences, or they go to one conference a year. They go to their denominational conference, and they're like, "That's all we have budget for." And now you want us to fly to Dallas and spend money to come to this, and trying to convince them that yeah, that's going to be valuable. We are going to bring the value and make sure that you walk away a power user of our products. Like you are going to be more efficient. You're going to be able to increase your giving at your church. You're going to be able to increase your communication engagement with your people. You will walk away from this conference with those tools in hand to be able to do that. And if you're not a Tidely customer, you're going to learn those same practical tools, but you can use whatever tool you want to do that. Like our heart behind this is we want you to embrace technology and marketing and communications and modern tools to help run your church more efficiently and in a more powerful way, so that you can make tremendous impact on the kingdom. It doesn't matter what tools you use. We just want to encourage you to explore those tools and figure out which one is the best for you.
So I've got to ask this right now. I was going to ask it later, but Michaela Alexis was on the show 2 weeks ago, and she reached out to me today, and she asked the question, said, can you help churches whose websites still look like they're in the 1990s? So is Modern Church Leader Conference going to solve that problem for us?
Absolutely. It is incredible. Like we have a website tool, and it's actually super cool because you can type in the URL of your existing website, and in 5 minutes it will build you a new website on the Tidely Sites platform
No way.
using AI.
Wow.
It's fantastic. And
Holy cow.
for the most part, it gets you 80% of the way there, and then you start dragging and dropping and changing copy. And but if you have an existing website, it pulls everything over, builds it for you, and gives you a great start. And so, like it's amazing how many church sites we see. They look like they're from the '90s, early 2000s because they literally are. Like it's they're like, yeah, we spent 30 grand on this website, 10, 20 years ago, and we don't know why nobody visits it, and nobody knows how to update it. And so we provide a tool that makes it easy for them to transition to something a little more modern.
I
But
had no
you'll
idea.
learn that at the conference for sure.
I had no idea you had such an easy answer to that question. That's amazing.
Of course, we've got an easy answer to everything now, Phil.
All right, just ring the easy button. All right. So I've talked to you several times, and I've heard you talk about Betty, and
Oh
Betty is
yeah,
an avatar for your ideal customer, which I love that you have a name for her. And obviously, it could be a guy, but you
sure,
must assume that she's
Brian. I don't know.
How did you come up with that? And then more specifically, how does she help you in the planning of the conference?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for the record, Betty's more of an internal persona, but the idea there is,
Sure.
at smaller churches, mostly small and medium sized churches, which is really our bread and butter at Tidely, because we're a free giving platform, no monthly fees, no contracts. Like you can get up and running in 5 minutes, even build a website in 5 minutes, like I just said. Like that's our ideal customer profile, is that small, anywhere from 50 to 300, 500 person church, like right in that kind of zone, which happens to be, 2/3 of all churches in America. So it's a good market to hone in on. But yeah, like the persona of Betty is really that church admin who does it all. Like she's in charge of the bulletin every week. She's in charge of the slides sometimes on Sundays. She may be even in charge of the website and stuff like that. But she's the one who logs into Tidely every day and enters all the transactions from cash and check, donations on Sunday, that kind of thing. So, at each church it's different. Sometimes they have a secretary and a finance person. Sometimes the worship pastor is literally in charge of the website, or the student pastor is like I know how to use Canva. So, I'm the graphic designer and the website designer now. And, stuff like that. Like it's at a small church, you've usually got the lead pastor, maybe a worship pastor or a student pastor, and then like an admin or two.
Mhm.
And that's our user. That's who, we want coming to this conference, for one, because they're the ones in the trenches doing the work. But we want them to bring the team. We want them to come together. And so far, everyone buying tickets for this thing is coming as a team, which is great, because we've got content for lead pastors, worship pastors, student pastors, and all the church admins as well, and really cool networking experiences and dinners for them all too. But yeah, I mean that's who we build the products for, is that end user. The lead pastor, the executive pastor might be the decision maker when it comes to like what giving platform you're going to use or what tools you're going to use, because they're looking at cost and overall, use for the church. But at the end of the day, we want to make running your church easier so that you can focus on actually running your church and doing the mission of your church and not spending all the time frustrated with the tools that you use.
So just honing in for a second, and I acknowledge this is an internal avatar, and most of this, the avatars we come up with is not something we talk about publicly, but as we're talking to other event organizers here primarily, what's one decision that you've made that you probably wouldn't have made for that church conference, but because Betty is your clear avatar who you need coming to the conference, what's something you're doing at Modern Church Leader Conference that is specifically for her?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not just one thing. Like we're curating experiences to where she or he is not going to come and just sit down and listen to a person on stage and then take some notes and walk away. They're going to be able to sit down, with or without their laptop, and collaborate with others on putting that content to work right away. They're going to have we're going to have like a genius bar type of experience where you can come and meet with Tithely employees. So we're bringing most of the company with us to this thing, and you'll be able to troubleshoot. You'll be able to get training hands on right there on how to use tools. We'll walk you through how to build a killer newsletter to send out to your church. We'll help you set up follow up text message campaigns for new visitors to your church. We'll help you learn how to input transactions into your CHMS. Stuff like that. Like they'll get that hands-on training, especially since we're a remote company. We've got about 180 employees, but we all work throughout the world, wherever we are, at our homes and on the road. And we don't have a building. And our churches, we have 40,000 churches in 55 different countries and
Wow.
every state. And so, it's hard to get the hands-on training and stuff like that people sometimes need. And so this is a great opportunity for them to come and get that and collaborate with others who are going through the same thing and using the same tools. So there'll be plenty of experiences like that to where they can get, whether it's coaching or training or troubleshooting, in addition to just really sitting in the workshops and learning new things. It's all going to be very collaborative and casual, and just open communication between the audience and the speakers, which I don't think you see a lot, from time to time at conferences.
You're by the way, you're putting a little pressure on me to make sure that my session is also interactive and
Absolutely. Yeah.
so I'm
Everyone's going to
listening.
walk away knowing how to play the saxophone.
I will not promise that.
That's a guarantee.
Guarantee. All right. Well, it's going to be a play saxophone that is purchased by Justin. You got it right. Hey, I want to switch gears for a minute because
Sure.
one of your areas of expertise is PR. You wrote the book for communicators on it, probably partly driven by your own experiences in that world. But I want to talk about
Yeah.
PR for events,
Yeah.
because things don't always go the way we thought they would go when we put on events, and sometimes they blow up. And so
Sure.
this year in 2024, Canva at their user conference had that happen. They did some,
Yeah,
I
they
don't,
did.
you might call it awkward, you might call it, campy, you might call it whatever, but they
Yeah.
did, they definitely did a big, memorable event to unveil some of the new features of their products, et cetera. And from my understanding of people who were watching it live and at the event, they thought it was really fun and like on brand, but that's not the way the online world saw it.
Right.
So Justin, you've been hired. And by the way, it blew up with a lot of negative response and also people cheering for them. It was a mixed response for sure.
Right.
You've been hired as the PR consultant when it's starting to blow up. What are the things that you would do for an event like that? If it's like, what are the things that they can do then, assuming they did nothing in advance? We're going to talk secondly about what we need to do in advance so that we're ready.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I said that online in case the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah. It's funny. You have a vision for these events sometimes that you think is just going to be cool and new and innovative and different. And you're trying to stand out, especially with like a product launch type of event like that. You want it to be different and new. Apple has kind of set the standard for cool and crazy. I mean, those events, their keynotes for product launch events just get crazier and crazier. Those last one, they had people skydiving out of a plane onto the campus and stuff. And, whether they actually did it or not is actually like confusing because they did it so well, with the production value that went into that. And so you got that standard, and then you've got on the other end all these boring webinars and podcasts and stuff like that are just like, all right, this is the same old stuff. Like, why would I watch a product event from that? So I get what they were going for. And honestly, like, they hyped it up pretty heavily. Like if you're a Canva user, it was almost like you had to close out of 8 things just to use the product because they were all promoting like, oh my gosh, the next big thing is coming and you have to watch this. It was really well done marketing wise, at least, to hype the event up. And so I think, people's expectations were super high. And then, you either love the experience or you don't. I think what I would, suggest that they do, if I was hired to come in after that and kind of clean up after it, it would be to just, you gotta laugh at yourself. You gotta, have fun with it. In fact, when I was first hired at Tithely, it's focused on building out their events. And so we do these online product launch events called Tithely Next. And it's, we do it once or twice a year and it's an online live streamed thing. And we are just promoting like what's coming next to Tithely and what's coming next to Church Tech. And they're big events. We usually get about 20, 30,000 people registering for these things and we give away lots of stuff and they're really well done. But that first one that I produced was just a production nightmare. Everything went wrong. In fact, I think we were using StreamYard at the time, and something just went wrong. We weren't able to play the videos that we had. We weren't able to, switch from one speaker to the next, and audio would cut out. We had people talking on camera that didn't realize that their mic wasn't coming through. I mean, it was 10, 15 minutes into this thing and nothing had worked right yet. We hadn't been able to even effectively announce a new product yet. We've got our CEO and our COO up there doing their best. It's all live. And it got to the point where we were just like, cut it. Like, this isn't working. We're not able to show you anything. And so we're sorry. Cut the feed. We'll be back later. It was just disaster. 20,000 people watching it live. And, we immediately cut up the video into like a blooper reel, put some fun music behind it, and we just made fun of ourselves like crazy.
Okay. I
I'll
love
have
it.
to see if it's still on YouTube. I'll send it to you so you can put it in the show notes, the blooper reel, because it was just the most terrible product launch live stream you've ever experienced. And people were frustrated right away because they were like, look, I took time out of my day to watch this and you guys are idiots. Like, but we showed that blooper reel after, and we just blasted that everywhere, and it just diffused the whole situation. People were like, oh, okay, we get it. And then we produced a good one and put that out, and people were like amazed at the product. And I think that's why Canva's going to do all right too, because honestly, the stuff that they announced was incredible. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I had legit web designers and graphic designers messaging me going, the the stereotypical like AI is going to replace designers has always been like, whatever, you can't replace my ingenuity and design and beauty and stuff like that. But they legit were like, oh man, like we're we might be out of a job, or we're gonna have to pivot 10 different ways to, keep making money. Because, and it's true, like every small church I know uses Canva. We use Canva at Tidely to create stuff. Like oftentimes,
yeah,
anytime we need something designed or created, it's, can we do this in Canva in 5 minutes? Great, go do it. If not, okay, send it to the designer. Or if we need something a little more, fancy, we'll do that. But you
yep,
know, half the time at least, we're able to just knock it out in Canva. And now you literally just type in what you want. I want a flyer that promotes this, whatever, and then poof, it like spits it out with original photography and everything. Like the days of stock photography are over, because we can just create it on the fly and it looks great. Now granted, there's still a need for real designers and stuff like that, but the fact is their product is good, and no PR cleanup or anything is gonna fix your problems if you are just terrible at what you do. It's the
right.
same with churches. I help churches all the time going through PR crisis, and my advice is never to brush it under the rug or anything like that. Like I always start out with like, hey, the way you get through this is to be candid and open and transparent, and just help walk your people through in a pastoral way how to get through this. You're not trying to hide anything. You're not trying to move on past this quickly. The key here is just communicating well and clearly and on the right channels and at the right time and from the right people. But that's, that should be common sense for it. But at the end of the day, if that church is corrupt, or if the pastor who slept with somebody he shouldn't be is still in the pulpit, nothing can save that church. You're sinning. You're doing something wrong. You need to solve the problem and move on. It's the same with products. Like if your product sucks, no amount of marketing is going to help. You might get an uptick at first,
Right.
but then once people start using the product and realize that it sucks, they're going to cancel. So marketing can help bring you people, but the product's going to help sustain it as well. So it really, at the end of the day, they had fun, and it didn't really matter, because their product spoke for itself.
Well, and I think the community, to their credit, also rose up
Yeah,
and spoke on behalf of what happened at the event. Because actually, that's the first way I even knew that it happened, was a community member advocating on behalf of saying, "Hey,
yeah,
I was there. I
yeah.
saw this happened. I thought it was pretty cool. I think all the naysayers need to just shut up," basically. You
Well,
know?
and that's, when you define like marketing, advertising, PR, like that's the distinguishing factor of PR is someone else saying that your
Mhm,
product is good.
mm,
Marketing is putting it out there. We're good. Come buy it. Here's the price.
right,
And you do that through advertising. But PR is, no. Here's the perception of the public about who we are and what we stand for. And so, whether they curated that influencer, or if that influencer naturally came up, it's even better if people just naturally start talking about you.
oh, yeah, this was
Um,
natural for sure.
yeah, which
There
is
was no
great. I mean,
no,
that's, you want to help curate and foster that as much as you can.
absolutely. Alright, so just let's hone in for just a minute, talking to the event organizers. What's 1 or 2 things we need to do from a PR standpoint to be ready in
Yeah,
case that event ever does happen? And obviously, we hope and pray that it never does, but,
right.
something is bound to happen some year. So what are some things we need to do to be ready so that we can create our blooper video using that as a metaphor for
Yeah.
how we respond depending on what the response needs to be?
Yeah, I think I talk about this in my book PR Matters. It's basically crisis management 101 is to be prepared, to be as proactive as you can, because if you have no plan and a crisis hits, you're doomed. Like you're in defensive mode at that point, and you're scrambling, and you're not going to be quick enough, and you're going to make mistakes, and you may not come out of it because you didn't have a plan ahead of time. So it's very important to look ahead. And when it comes to events, Canva, they knew they were taking a chance with how crazy and weird their show was. They could have been or should have been planned for, like, okay, what is our response if this is the backlash? And have those responses ready.
Mm.
Have a blooper reel ready if you know that that's going to be a definite outcome of it. Have, or at the very least, have you know video guys ready to splice that up in a timely manner, type of thing. Like, think ahead at all the scenarios that might hit your event. When it comes to events, a lot of that's should be pretty easy too. If you have a controversial speaker, and so get ahead of that. Know what people are going to say about it. Know what the questions are going to be.
Mm.
Have all that pre-written ahead of time. Have videos pre-done ahead of time. Know who your spokesperson is ahead of time if you do get inquiries from the media or the public or ticket holders, and know who is going to be answering those questions, who's going to be the person making that call. Like, have that all planned ahead of time, like actually written down, as much as you can. Natural disasters, delta issues. Like, imagine if your conference had started this past Monday, July 22nd. Imagine if that was the first day of your conference and thousands of people are flying in for it, and no one shows up to your conference because they're stuck in the Atlanta airport. That's crazy. But every conference organizer should probably have a plan in place for that.
Yep.
What do we do if no one shows up? Well, all the speakers, are hopefully still here, or maybe they can come in digitally. Like, let's just create content and live stream it so that everybody can watch it from their phones in the airport. And what's our plan for refunds, or doing the event again later, or whatever the actual actions are, like, plan ahead of that. We've done smaller events like customer dinners. We did a customer dinner in Florida one time, and we had 300 people registered for it. We rented out a whole Maggiano's, and the whole concept was we just wanted our local area customers to come enjoy a meal. It's like a pastor's luncheon type of thing.
Mhm.
And two people showed up. 300 registered, RSVP'd. Two people showed up. We had this massive banquet hall,
Oh my.
thousands of dollars of food. And what had happened, I forget which hurricane it was, but 2 days before, a hurricane had gone through Florida, and people were messaging us saying, "Hey, we can't make it to the dinner because we've been 3 days without power. Like,
Wow.
I can't even take a shower to come to your event." And there were other people who were just like, "Yeah, sorry, my house is wiped out." Like, I mean, it was just a tragic thing. And so, for one, we had a great time with those two people. Pretty sure they both signed up for Tylee, but we had a ton of food left over too. So not only did we send them home with lots of leftovers, but we took as much of that food to local fire stations, and a
Mm.
couple churches in the area took some of it too. We just made the most of it. We probably should have filmed that or put it out, but it just kind of felt weird at the moment. But there's definitely some PR opportunities there we could have taken advantage of, maybe, but we just didn't care. But stuff like that happens. Like, what do? You can plan ahead of that. Maybe doing an event in Florida during hurricane season, we probably should have anticipated maybe something could have happened. But you learn from those, and you create the plans for next time too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think your point here is we don't want to wait to have the experience to create the plan.
Right.
So let's learn from other people's experiences. Like, there are some predictable things.
Hundred
I was
percent.
literally reviewing yesterday some of the customer service plans we have for social media marketing world, and our standard response, if someone got stuck in the Delta crisis this week, would not have been a good response. in that particular moment. Because normally, you know, the refund date is long gone.
Oh yeah,
And
your
it's
costs are sunk at that point. Like you're
yeah, but you want to be kind, but you also want to be firm because we can't have everybody asking for refunds and can you
yeah,
push it to the future and all that. But if it happens in mass like that, then you got to change it. Just like in the wake of COVID, where we had to
right,
be willing to refund everybody their money because it was an act of God. So
right.
I appreciate the perspective you're bringing. Justin, this has been a fantastic conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I want to circle back to modern church leader for just a minute, and I put the link back up
I
here.
think
What's something you're super excited about for this year and this first inaugural conference called Modern Church Leader Conference? What's something you are just almost can't sleep because you're so excited?
yeah, I think it's going to be uh people are going to learn a ton, but it's going to be a fun experience. Like we've never been able to do a full fun conference experience at that church conference. And like we're even our exhibit hall is going to be cool at Modern Church Leader. Like it's going to feel like you're entering into a backyard barbecue, as you walk into this thing. And it's not just going to be rows and rows of booths. There's going to be interactive fun stuff, and all of our partners that are coming to this are providing value themselves too to the attendees. It's not just um, a place to go and shop and get sold to. You're gonna learn content in the exhibit hall as well too. And so I'm just excited. It's going to be such a fun time. People are going to be they're not going to want to leave. Is I think the feeling that people will have, and they'll be excited to come again next year, and we'll figure that out too as we go a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be great. I think people are going to learn a ton of stuff, and we just we want to be on the forefront of helping create modern church leaders. To us, that doesn't mean anything theological, but it means you're embracing technology, you're embracing modern tools, and we're going to help you navigate how to use them to the advantage of the kingdom, and not, and to avoid the abuse and stuff that can happen when you start talking about technology and AI and all kinds of stuff. But, Paul used the tools of his day, and the we have 12 Bibles in our home because of the printing press long ago, and then digitally through YouVersion and stuff like that. It's like, let's use the tools that are here to our advantage, and let's use them for good, and redeem those who are using them for bad. And I don't think we should shy away from them at all. And so we want to help kind of foster churches into the next level, because unfortunately, like you said, a lot of churches still have, you know, websites stuck in the 90s and early 2000s, which is just shocking. Like churches should have the best websites. Like Coca-Cola and Nike and Apple, and they should be looking like, "Oh man, did you see
Yeah.
that church's website? We need to copy that." Like we absolutely should do that. We are created by our creator, and we're created to create, and we should be the best at that. So
And
yeah,
if kids say that one of the things that churches are in the business of is communication. And so
yeah,
because of that, the online communication that we do should indeed be the best. Pastors train for years and years to hone their speaking ability so that they
yeah,
can preach well. Why aren't we doing that online? So I love
100%.
all right, Justin, I promised that we would end with one thing that might happen at
Mm.
Modern Church Leader, and that is there might be a saxophonic moment, but there will be one
Yeah.
right now for sure. Um, give me 3 words that stand out from our conversation, and at least one of them needs to be emotional.
Ooh, emotional. Wow, I don't get emotional, Phil.
I know you don't. I know you. You can find one, I'm sure.
I don't know. I'm encouraged. Um, like you've been helping us with this conference as well too. I've loved your knowledge, and just this podcast. The content you put out has been helpful as an event organizer. So I'm encouraged. I'm hopeful, and just really looking forward to helping churches be more innovative. I mean, that's what our conference is all about: technology and innovation, and how to use that for the kingdom.
All right. So this will be a response. It'll be innovative, encouraging, and hopeful.
All right.
So here you go. An original song just for this moment. Justin, it has been amazing to be with you. Can't wait to see you in October, if not before. Thanks everyone who watched and listened, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil.